Good. Just had our board meeting and let's see, where's the AI companion? There was kind of an issue of within the training, someone who's sort of problematic,
Oh,
the
interesting.
personality issues, and yeah, so
That in within the training for facilitators?
yeah, someone who's sort of demanding, critical, trying to take control kind of thing. So.
Well, that's not
And
fun.
how do you deal with that? Yeah, Bill was having some issues with that because I don't deal with the training right now, so he's dealing with it. So I always suggest having an empathy circle with the people.
Yeah, that can be a go-to method that can help work through that.
Yeah, we had a ages ago. We had someone in the training who was just super disruptive. I don't know if I ever told you the story.
I don't think so.
But he would start with these groups, especially like empathy type groups, just slowly and then slowly get more and more sort of aggressive and demanding, and he would just blow up groups, because he would just create all kinds of drama and
So he would hop from group to group.
well, he would join different groups, like the NVC, Nonviolent Communication Groups. He was joining them, and I like to be open, let everybody in, and have generally have a high tolerance for disruptive people or how to address them. But he would like in the pre before we do the circle, everybody introduces themselves, and in the circle, he would start yelling at people. Now in his introduction, he would yell and criticize people,
Wow.
and then like Bill said, this is not the place for that. He was, and then he would say "fuck you" and all this kind of stuff. And but then when it came into the circle, uh, he would uh, he would always be. He had a little clock, and he was like super fastidious about turn times for the turns, and he would do the circle really properly because if he would not do the circle, I would say do all that stuff, and he can say whatever he wants in the circle, right? So
In his time limit.
and he would be and he would be aggressive. Like some people, he'd be super aggressive. You're an idiot, and just so. And I remember once there was someone in our group. She just reflected back. You're saying I'm an idiot, blah blah blah. You're really feeling angry, and then he was okay.
Wow.
but
Wow, that's a beautiful case study right there.
but it's more complicated because he would also be on Facebook, and he would do posts on Facebook. They were super critical, said you people are hypocrites, and just really be really disruptive. And then I said, okay, well, we need an empathy circle to discuss this. And I did a whole series of recorded empathy circles, with him, and addressed each of the points, and we went for hours,
Oh,
and they were all recorded and posted to the internet. And so it was anyway. That actually, I thought I felt good about it because I didn't exclude anyone, uh, you know, but I tried to solve it through the empathy circle, and then even after we did those, he would write critical things on Facebook, and then I just put the link to the empathy circle and say, look, this is where we discussed this and resolved it,
oh, that's nice.
and so I really like if there's conflict like that, that it's publicly recorded and that we have a record of it. And that's
Yeah.
what I was suggesting to Bill, that you have these, public, and it's actually part of the training, that in the training, if there's any issue, you can call for a restorative empathy circle to address it. So anyway, so I know we're kind of dealing with that stuff like
Yeah.
that
Well,
always comes up.
it's cool that you have that kind of experience to draw on, and that you have practiced what you've preached in the past. And so now, as a leader, you can show people this is a way that has been effective to deal with
Yeah,
this.
you got to have some methods. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. I wanted to tell you, I trying to remember the date on this, but I'm coming down to Southern California. Um, Maybe I won't say the dates since we're being recorded. Sometime in October though, so I can email you the dates when I find it. I'm coming down for a conference, and it would be great to meet up while I'm down there.
I'm in Northern California.
Oh, Northern. I
Yeah,
thought.
Bay Area, Berkeley, near
Oh,
Berkeley.
oh, that's
Would be
right.
great to get together, but it's a bit of a quite a
Yeah,
distance.
maybe that's not feasible. Darn it. I
Mhm.
was looking forward to that possibility. Okay.
That's before when I was in Santa Barbara. It would have been a
That's
bit
right. That's what
closer.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of. Okay, I'm gonna just pull this up and see if I can remember where it is. Yeah, I can look at this later. I actually promised my kids I would take them to a water park today. And they are itching to leave as soon as I get off of this meeting. So I don't want to take time on unnecessary stuff today.
Okay.
And if there's any chance I can hop off at 10:30 your time.
Okay. Well, let's go quickly then.
Yeah, they would appreciate it because there's only about a week left before school starts.
So I do want to hear how were you with the empathy circle with Greg? How did that?
It
Would
was
you?
great.
Uh,
Yeah, that was fantastic. And I really appreciated that you facilitated that because I haven't been having as many problems since then. Just having the chance to really talk through it was really therapeutic for me. So I appreciated that. And it was really great to make connections with him and with Jana. Um, and yeah, I want to continue following up with them. I've been so busy with this other conference that I just got back from that I haven't even followed up with anybody yet, but I definitely want to keep in contact with them as well. So thank you for facilitating those introductions as well.
you have got two more call interviews. Well, with someone from the Empathy Center in the UK, Stony Brook. We're going to have a call next week, talking about definitions.
Oh, great.
So I'm starting to kind of reach out to people here and there to kind of stress test the holistic empathy,
And
model.
at this point, how are you feeling about how it's been received by different people?
Um, what I find is, if I run it by like with Greg, I kind of get agreement, understanding of it, but I don't know. It seems like the cognitive affective model is so dominant that it's like I had the same thing with Fritz Breithaupt, who's done all these critical books, Dark Side of Empathy and stuff. And I kind of go through the points where I think he's inaccurate, then he just ignores it all.
Oh.
It's like you get, I don't know. I just find it, so I don't know. I'm not really, I
Well,
think
it's
it's gonna,
funny.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's funny because it's called confirmation bias,
Uh-huh.
and people in academia, in psychology, know about that, and we know that people in general fall into that, but then we forget that we fall into it as well.
I wanted to show you something here. So this is our, review here. The agenda I had, but I don't know if I mentioned this, just confusion around empathy definition. So I just that's it. And I don't know, I was just thinking it's kind of overwhelming the more I sort of dig into this. It's like we've got the academic definition confusion, affective, cognitive, empathic concern or whatever model, which I think is, which is what the presentation is about, that is kind of addressing that. And so you have that is sort of a mess. You've got the academic critics of empathy who are sort of base their criticisms of empathy based on this model. So you got Jesse Prince, who I've interviewed before, Fritz Breithaupt, who I've interviewed. And then there's Paul Bloom, had some email exchanges with him, but he would never do a dialogue about it. And then, so you've got, this is just the muddlement, right? And I just was watching some videos by Daryl Cameron. He has his series on empathy, that conference, and it was everything. it's just so muddled. I don't know. I just find that there's so much confusion in terms of being sort of practical and moving forward because of this. Um, and then you have the compassion community critics like Tanya Singer, who are also critical of empathy. And they're usually can really, saying they're critical of, and it's based on, this model too, because they're being critical of affective empathy. And they're saying, no, empathy's, kind of has all these problems, compassion is better. Then we've got the political left wing, sort of the woke culture, who have gone into radical empathy and have been trying to take empathy into sort of I would say victimization, where you see people as victims, empathy, that you empathize and they become victims. And then, so they're kind of trying to redefine it to be a gateway at some level. I haven't seen too much of it, but it's out there to sort of a more woke culture. Then you've got the political right wing as response to that, and they're criticizing empathy. And then you got confused lay definitions. I don't know. So that's a little bit of the scope of what I'm seeing of the muddlement. I'm saying, oh my God, it's such a mess, So I hope, I think that what we're doing is helping to create, like a point of clarity and something that's practical.
Yeah,
So anyway, that's kind of what I was feeling a little bit frustrated with. I mean, I've been digging deep into this and I just was feeling a bit like this is a mess.
yeah, I think it is. That reminds me, while I was at the conference this past week, I was introduced to a literary agent, and it was kind of a serendipitous meeting because I was talking about some of my thoughts and some of the things that we've talked about empathy. And then somebody said, well, what about the critics of empathy? And I was like, oh, I've got some thoughts about that. And so I was chatting with him about that. And he was like, hey, just a second. This is my wife and she's a literary agent. Tell her what you just told me. And so I said, well, basically there's this confusion over the definition of empathy. And when we're using the same word to use different things, then we end up in a war of words and then we don't actually make any progress.
Mm-hmm.
I told her about, there's this camp that's against empathy, a lot of traction in mainstream media, like all of these books that have come out. And so people are kind of gravitating away from empathy, but we're saying that that's actually a deficit. As you say, this is a deficit of empathy if you're only empathizing with one side. And she was like, let's talk. I think that this is worth getting published. Like, you need to write a book about this. I was like, as a matter of fact, that's exactly what we want to do. And I told her about you and how we've been working on this. And then this was another serendipitous moment because right then her friend walked by who works for HarperCollins.
Mm-hmm.
And has gotten some things published that are like really academic in nature, but translating it for a lay audience. And so she said, if we can work together, like you, me, and her work together to get a proposal put together, we can send it to that other woman who works at HarperCollins. And she thinks that we have a really good chance of getting something published.
I've been thinking about that too, about how to get that in. My thing is I'm a terrible writer. I struggle with it. So I'm an area expert,
Right.
So it's like, I don't know if feel like you're a good writer.
Well, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I
Mm-hmm.
have been told by okay, I'm just going to tell you this. This is going to sound really arrogant, but I do have the skills to write
Mm-hmm.
But when I applied for the PhD program, my essay, when I sent it in, one of the men who read it at BYU said that it was the best essay he'd ever written.
Wow.
He had ever read, excuse me. And so that's something that I have excelled at. And I would be.
Well, that might be a perfect combination then.
Yeah,
so.
I'd be really, really happy to work on that.
Yeah.
And what I told her is the thing that's going to be a struggle for me is timeline on something like this because I have very specific deadlines. within my academic trajectory. Like this next year, I have probably like 7 or 8 papers, academic papers that I need to get published. And so that has to take precedence because that's what I'm being paid to do. It's what, like that's who I am right now is I have to get that done. So it would have to be probably over the summer next year that we would like maybe lean into this a bit more. And yeah, so what she said that when she puts together a proposal with somebody, it's not just here's the book, but it's also here's our game plan for how we're going to make it happen, like our own deadlines that we've set for ourselves and all of that. So I feel a bit overwhelmed by that because I don't know that I could commit to specific deadlines. But I mean, we've got so much content, so much of a good work that I feel like it would be easy to write it. Like once I sit down and start writing, I get into a flow state and I can write and write and write. And I love doing it too. So,
you might have a competition with Susan Lanzoni because she had put together a proposal and was shopping it around to.
She's the one that did the history of empathy.
Yeah.
Well, so, it's not the same book, right?
Yeah.
She's not doing exactly what we're doing.
No. I don't know what she's doing. I've tried to connect with her. I haven't heard. At first, she was kind of like open to talking. I mean, I've interviewed her and stuff, but
now your competition.
Yeah, I guess maybe I thought, well, why is it's a couple of times that I've reached out and she hasn't responded. So anyway, it's definitely needed, and I think she doesn't have the practical experience. I think the empathy circle is what really separates, the definitions, that here's a practical thing, practical process, and anybody can do it. And the more it's spread in families and, with friends and community, the better. And then you have a reference point. So I think that's what makes it very practical.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I know that we agree on that level that if it gets too academic, it becomes esoteric and nobody can even understand or follow what we're talking about, and it's no longer useful. So keeping it grounded in the practical, I think, is really important.
And personal. I was just reading the Roots of Empathy book again. At dinner, I eat kind of fast, so after I eat, I read like a little bit to Joan, and while she's eating, because I eat too fast. And then, so we've been reading Roots of Empathy, and she loved it because it's very personal and practical. It's like that, it's kids and how they do that. I don't know if you know that program, Roots of Empathy program.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I've looked at their website. I've thought about doing some research with their program, but that it's kind of surface level, my understanding of what they do. But I wanted to read something to you as well. I'm going to forward this to you. I heard back from my cognitive and affective processes professor about his thoughts on the cognitive and affective model of empathy. And I'm just going to read this and we can kind of maybe discuss it. But yeah, then I'll need to hop off in a few minutes. And so I asked him, let's see, what was my question? So just asking him about like if it's too simplistic to separate out the affective and cognitive aspects of empathy. This is what he said. To say that cognition and emotion are tightly linked is probably true, but I think it would be going too far to say that they are the same thing or that they don't need to be understood separately. Consider this paper on emotion regulation. And he gives me a reference there. People can feel emotions and then make decisions, cognition, about how and if they will respond to those emotions. While emotion and cognition work together to determine the final outcome, they are separable. Two people can feel the same emotion but choose to respond to it differently. And there's more to it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
It would be good to have him do an empathy circle and say, where do you see cognition and empathy within the listening process? I guess again, we're talking abstractions here, what he's talking about. How does it actually deal I mean, how is it actually in a real practice is so,
Yeah, and
you know
I'm
what I'm
sure that
saying?
if he wanted to get into practical, he might have some thoughts, but
Mm,
again, this was keeping it rather theoretical. So go ahead.
yeah. And the other part is the cognitive part itself has a felt experience, right? It's like you can feel, and how does he address that? The felt experience of cognitive process. You know,
So
I mean,
like when you're making a decision about how to respond to the emotion, there is emotion attached to that as
yeah.
well.
And it's
Yeah.
when you hear something, when you hear a cognitive thought, you can get excited about it. You feel excited about it, or you feel heavy about it. So I just haven't seen a good. They're saying it's totally separate, but there is a felt experience. And it seems like you can't not have a felt experience to something that's happening in you.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how do they address that? What do, you know, in terms of this fine line?
Yeah. And I guess the practical side of that is that there are those who are pushing for rational compassion, where you kind of try to leave the emotion out of it, which is to say that it is conceptually divorced from each other, right? Like if they are two separate processes, then you can just choose to shut down this part of it and continue to have the cognitive side of it.
Yeah, but even if you're trying to analyze what action you're going to do, that analysis has a felt experience to it.
Yeah, and I don't know how they would respond to that.
And they're subtle. There's like, and that's the focusing. I think the focusing process, you know, I don't know if you looked into it.
A little bit.
Yeah, but that it really brings in the felt experience aspect of it,
Mhm.
of life. So anyway, it's something. It would be good to have a discussion with someone who's into this. There's another thing. We're kind of running out of time here, but what I'm starting to work on is the drama. This have you heard of the drama
Oh
triangle?
yeah, yeah. We've talked about this quite a
Oh,
bit.
okay, all right. So anyway, then I
Yeah.
won't go into it.
No,
Then
and your idea with comparing it with the empathy circle, those were ideas that we were discussing with each other.
okay, we covered that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
was
I
thinking
love
of
it. I
presenting
love
it
it.
this
I love
Saturday.
that you've visualized that because that makes sense to me. I'm going to forward you this. Actually, this is from,
Okay,
what's your email address? Because I'm in a different email address.
edwinrutch@gmail.com. RUTSCH.
RUH at gmail.com. Okay, so I'm forwarding this to you from my BYU account. Um, yeah, so he has some further thoughts about it, like based on some other things. And he says people can feel emotions and then make decisions about how or well, or I guess I already read that. Or consider this one paper about math anxiety and working memory. Let's see. Here they found that math anxiety has a negative influence on math performance, while working memory has a positive influence. That is, two students can both have the same emotion, but one with greater working memory will cope better with the anxiety. Again, cognition and emotion work together, but have a separate influence on the outcome. I would imagine that empathy is similar. So he goes into the reasons that he thinks that they are separate processes that are closely linked. So yeah, that math anxiety one I think is a good example about how cognition and affect kind of work separately from each other. But let's dig into it deeper and see if I'm sure that there is research out there about cognitive and affective empathy. I know, I mean, obviously you've read it, I've read it, but looking at it through this lens of if there are certain predictors that can change the outcome and make somebody more cognitively empathetic and less affectively empathetic, or vice versa. If you can separate it out in an experiment, that means they're two separate things. But if there is no research that shows that, then I would side with you and say that they're not conceptually separate.
But how are they within the context of the empathy circle? So,
And that's the thing. That's why we need to do some research on this
mhm,
because nobody has researched it yet.
yeah,
That's
I haven't seen anything that makes a clear experiential. when they're talking about cognitive empathy, they're usually talking about what I would call imaginative empathy anyway. They're
Mhm.
talking, and the imaginative empathy, if you're like Meryl Streep and you're an actor and taking on the role of, Margaret Thatcher or Julia Child, you're feeling the experience that you're sort of imagining being in that role. So it's not a detached thing anyway. It's not a detached. So anyway, it's a, yeah, it's
But I think
quite
what he's saying
muddled.
here is like leaving that imaginative empathy side out of
Okay.
it. I think what he's saying is that when you feel an emotion,
Okay.
you have other factors at play that can lead you in one direction or another. So what he's saying here is working memory in that one paper was the thing that made the difference between the emotion and the performance outcome. So
hmm
working memory was what they call a mediator, which changed the relationship.
Right. Okay. So I feel anxious about someone, and then I remember if I listen to them and reflect back what I'm hearing, then that's a good action to take.
Yeah, and I think that we should try to operationalize that to see if we can figure out how that actually plays out in the empathy circle and design some sort of experiment with like a hypothesis that can
Uh-huh.
help us to test whether or not this cognitive and affective empathy mumbo jumbo is real, like if there's merit to it, or if it's more lined up processes that are
Mm.
more interrelated with each other. um,
Yeah.
so I think we
Yeah.
just need to give that some
Go.
thought.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah. I
what
get
you
that. Uh-huh. Yeah. So you want the kind of hard science grounding about, the differentiation between the two.
Yeah,
Is
because
there?
if all of this research is saying one thing and we have a hypothesis of something different, that
hmm
that means in academia is you have to test it. So in order to push back against their research, we have to have something in the research to show that we can, you know, we can have a peer-reviewed citation for.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think you got to really dig into that. I mean, there's other issues that they're not even talking about the difference between the two. They're mixing cognitive and being imaginative and taking perspective. And then they're also talking about the reaction. Affective is a reaction to the experience. And then there's also the process of sensing into someone and how we relate to the felt experience. Uh, and so if you're angry, I sense your anger, or do I get consumed by your anger and I
Right.
become anger? So there's kind of two concepts actually within the affective empathy that
Right.
are kind of little kind of muddled as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so to just call it affective empathy, where it really should be broken out between emotion contagion and emotional
Mhm.
understanding. Like if I sense,
Emotional reaction.
yeah, so would that be, yeah, emotion contagion is part of it. And then you're right, then there's an emotional reaction because sometimes I am responding to what I'm sensing in you. If I'm sensing that you are angry about this over here, then I get angry that you're angry. I'm not
Mhm.
angry about that thing that you're angry about. Like, so that it wouldn't be the same thing as emotion contagion. It would be an emotional response that is
Mhm.
that is internal to me.
Yeah. There's a Dan Zahavi. He's a big phenomenologist, and
Uh-huh.
I think I sent you the link to his talk. His definition of empathy, and his is along the lines of basic empathy. I mean, he's doing Rogers, what Rogers is doing basic empathy, and he addresses this affective empathy, and he says they don't even explain it. The academics aren't even going into the nuances, which we were just doing of it. He says it's very vague what they're even talking about. Remember, that was his criticism.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's my main criticism as well. So I think we should definitely give that some thought and see if there's some sort of an experiment that we can design where we have people in an empathy circle go through and there's a certain outcome that we're expecting, but then people have an interaction that's not an empathy circle and see what the difference is and see what they like, how they respond. I don't know. I'm sure that there are scales that they have in psychology that look at cognitive processes and affective processes. So maybe like reflecting on their experience, like did you think certain things or did you feel certain things, and just see what the differences are between the different groups.
Mhm.
But yeah, that would take quite a bit of planning. So I think
Yeah.
we need to give it some thought, because if that needs to happen before we write a book about it, then we need to be conscientious
Mhm.
of like the order of operations here.
Yeah, and you're just saying to be clear to counteract the affective cognitive model out there to kind of find the hole in it or
Right. I mean, but we can still, I think that it's okay to write a book that is a criticism of something without the empirical backing. And then after you write the book, then you do the empirical work to prove or disprove your own theory. But we need to be thoughtful about the order.
Yeah, it's good. Sounds
Okay, but I've
good.
got to go. So
Alrighty.
we'll chat more about it next week.
Okay. See you then.
Hey, have a good week.
Bye.